Off camera, we were talking about what to call this podcast. A little bit of Inception, and we were trying to think of some cool names. Obviously, Tilak himself personally is impacted a lot by his religion, so I was kind of maybe talking about doing something with that. And then obviously you've been on a journey over the last few years, which for anyone, I think you should share your story.
Yeah, no, that's something that I definitely want to do. Where, like, I went through this healing journey, and then a big part of that was I really wanted to train with Deck. Should probably do a proper intro. But yeah, welcome back to the actual podcast. We're still trying to figure out a name. But today I've got Deck. He ex gym owner. One of the first big clients that I had. And someone that I really look up to because not only was it interesting like shooting for him and like all his PTs and the gym in general, but it was sick to really see like, oh, like these guys are really good at what they do, and like just seeing like this whole what I thought of gym compared to how it actually should be done, sort of changed the way I saw it. It was a shame I never got to train with you, but hopefully we're gonna try and do that. We're gonna try and like get a session. I think that'll be sick.
We tried to get Tilak to train, but he was so busy and like he had a lot of going on in his life at the time. You were between America and Preston. It's crazy just to see how he's developed, but the passion is still there. Like everything you do is like so detailed, meticulous. And I remember the day we'd got 3 quotes off 3 different videographers, and the one we'd used last we were really unhappy with because it was a little bit like it was hard work for him to come and do the videoing. So we didn't like it. So the team decided we wanted someone else. So as a team, we were thinking, and we had these 3 people in, and Tilak was obviously one of them. And it was just like everyone was like, "Oh, he's really young and inexperienced." And I remember being like, "Yeah, but he loves it," and the passion was insane. You were the only one, and were like, who asked this one specific question. I don't know if you still ask it. You went, "What story do you want to tell?" And it just resonated with me. We talked a couple of hours ago off podcast where I think the world is moving more to an output. So whatever your output is, that's what you get paid for. And I would suggest that's a better way of doing it rather than being shackled between a 9 and 5. Like it's no secret that I'm like quite autistic. So I could sit at my laptop and do all my PowerPoints and marking in a couple of hours, where it might take another person 9 to 5, but I can't sit there for those couple of hours off the bat. I might need to do an hour, go away, do an exercise, come back, do an hour, go away and exercise, come back. Or don't have to be exercise, it's something weird. I have to go away and do something and come back. So people's work patterns are different, they're vastly different. I talked about a college, I won't name the college, but they were very strict and old fashioned, where they wanted you to stay there 9 to 5, and then you had to do your marking in the college and stuff like that. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, why can't they do it at home, or when it's more convenient to them? They might be able to go to the gym, come back and be more productive in the evening. Just let people be adults and construct their own time. It is mad. It's a crazy world we live in. How does your workflow work? So how do you do yours?
In terms of how I manage.
Yeah, so like, do you spend like 4 hours editing, or do you do a little bit, or do you break it down? You showed me something on your iPad earlier where you had the videos separated into different bits. Do you work on a separate section at a time, or how does it work?
So that's a good question actually. So what I do is, firstly, like there's different stages, right? There's the actual shooting part, there's a planning part, and then there's obviously editing and finishing off. So I feel like the first part depends on, like, that could take like a few days, and I'm just like you, where I can't really like sit there for like 10 hours straight and just go at it. Obviously shoots are different because it's more like creative and doing stuff. So like when it comes to shooting, we could be shooting for 5 hours plus, but there's loads of moving parts, right? So plan takes me like a day and a bit, and then workflow, like plan the shoot, get the shoot done. And then when it comes to editing, I feel like it's always changed. The way I edit's changed a lot.
What's more important? I used to have this stupid idea, right, between skill or experience, and it was kind of like skill/energy. Where I used to think all big companies should hire younger members of staff because they're more energetic, often they're more up to date with the latest research and methods, and sometimes they could have a lot of skill. Where you could have an older, more experienced person where they are not as energetic, not as committed, and they have a lot of distractions such as family and hobbies and health issues, all that sort of stuff. Now I'm in a completely different camp. I believe you need a good mixture of people, but also experience and skill, energy, all these things need to come from different people at different times, and a good mixture. You've gained a lot of experience over the last few years, so what do you think is more important, skill or experience?
That's actually a really good question.
In the comments, what do you think is more important?
Because I think you're right. Like, I feel like you need experience because some things you just won't know until you've gone through it. I don't know. That's a tricky one. I feel like I would probably say experience, just because.
It's crazy, though,
yeah, just because skill is good, but it's that quote where it's like hard work or like passion will always outwork like talent all the time. So it's like you can have the skill, right? And it's one of those where like you can have like amazing camera work, you can have like amazing skill, but if you've not done it enough, you won't know like how to react when something goes horribly wrong. And I think that's way more important.
I'll give you an example of it.
Yeah.
The gym that we work with in Manchester, they were buying loads of new equipment. And when they were ordering it, I was like, oh, you can't do this, you need to do this, because they were going to put like a big deadlift platform on their second floor. And I was like, well, that's not going to be good for your lighting below. And they were like, oh, we didn't think of that. How did you know that? I was like, experience. I've done that mistake 10 years ago. And then they were like, oh, what about this? Why don't we need like these 2 squat racks and we need 2 benches, but we can't fit them both in. I was like, well, why don't you get combo racks? What's a combo rack? And then you kind of teach them and like, well, that's just for experience. It made me feel really old. But experience is vital. And it's like, if I go and teach a PT course now, when I first started teaching, I would have to plan meticulously. I'd have to go through so much of the PowerPoint. I'd have to research some stuff, especially if I'd forgot it. And I'd have to go through it and then deliver. Now I could turn up tomorrow and deliver just straight away because you've got that experience. So I do think it is a combination. And I also think energy is something that you kind of need to use smartly. Sometimes, like, I'm a big believer in, and this is something my mentor taught me, is splitting stuff up into like 12-week blocks. So like one project for 12 weeks worked really hard on it. So like recently I've been working on a careers initiative that we're really trying to help create more pathways for students. So I've been working on that, and that's my main focus every day. That's my main focus. For another 12 weeks, it might be to develop a specific part of the course. So it might be add more video content, add more CPD. And I'm a big believer in doing chunks like that. And I think you've done something similar where you did your chunks from your video that you did in America. So it's really interesting. How, like, workflow, has it changed over the years?
Yeah, I think it's gone from like focusing on this, like the cameras and like all the tech behind it, to being like, oh, what's like the message? What do I want to do? So like, and sometimes it means I have to restrict myself, where it's like, I'd love like 10 lights and all that sort of stuff. But is that really important where once I've got it set up, or would it be a case of I'd rather hire like a crew to deal with all the technical stuff, and I just want to sit down with the person I'm interviewing or the person whose story it's about and just learn and like just share their story, right? Like
my sister asked me the other day. She said, "Why do our parents, grandparents still watch TV, and why do we all watch like YouTube?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, think about it like this: our parents are used to TV shows, and they'll watch TV shows, and that'll probably bring emotion and routine to their life. Well, we'll watch YouTube because it's usually someone that we can resonate with, and it's more tailored content towards our generation." And it's the same sort of thing, like, it's a motive, it's something that's created emotion. And in 50 years' time, it won't be YouTube, it'll be something completely different that is creating emotion for the next couple of generations. And I think that's really important. And that's why like, stuff like football and sport and the gym is so important, because that sort of physical activity can bring out a lot of emotion in you. And whether it be you go into the gym because you've had a bad day and you want to feel better after it, you talked about your run earlier, whether you're watching sport and you want to believe in something and it does well, that's great as well. So there's lots of different facets there, and you've talked about making this podcast all about touching on those different facets. So like, what would you say the biggest lesson you've learned over the last year is then? Because I know you've gone on a big journey.
So I think the biggest thing throughout this like healing journey, or like figuring out, like, I'm very blessed to like obviously love what I do. So I'm like, I know what I want to do. I know what path I want to go down. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is like understanding people and understanding like myself, but also like discipline. And like, I think that's the key. Like anything that I want, it's like I always tell myself, I'm like, wait, are you taking yourself seriously? I was like, you want to be at the top of your game, but like, are you putting in the effort? Like, do you like, if I was to give myself, like, do I back myself? Would I like put money behind showcase? And then I would, but it's like, I don't always get up at the right time. Or I don't always like, I think I remember you telling G once, you're like, you got to get your hours in. You got to like have like sleep well, like prioritize your like training. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So like started prioritizing my training, started prioritizing nutrition, sleeping well, being disciplined. People, I think, is a big one because not just like romantic relationships, but career relationships and friendships. It's okay, let me just think about this. How much time, like treat yourself like, you know, like you're the shit, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to be wasting my time, right? With friendships and like, I feel like I've had that experience where, because I'm really nice and I like give advice, people just take advantage of that.
Nice.
Yeah, and then people use that, right? And I'm like, little wins, right? Where I'm getting into the habit where unless you are really close to me, if you message me and like, even if I have time, I'm not responding to you. Like I'm holding myself back. Like, nope. Like if I have to go to the gym, even if that means like you've messaged me, unless it's an opportunity, even if it's a friend that wants to catch up, like, and I have time, I'm like, no, gym first, food, and if I have time, I have my priorities. So setting boundaries.
Sacrifices there, haven't you? Boundaries, big one.
Big one, yeah.
Big one. But I mean, like recently, I got invited to a 30th of someone that we both know, and my friends are asking, "Are you going?" I was like, "No." I was like, why would I want to put myself in that environment where, unfortunately, those people I don't want to spend time with? And back in the day, you'd kind of do it to be polite. And now I'm like, why wouldn't I want to spend time with my niece, my nephew, my friend, my close friends, my family, or even, like you said, go and better yourself? You know, whether it be going gym, going golf for me, developing myself, spending time in my career. They're all different facets that I would class as more important than this person's birthday party in my life. Because I've not spoken to him for like over a year. It was a very random invite. And she was probably doing it out of being polite as well. So I feel like we're in a society where that is the norm. People will do stuff like, how many times people go, oh, I've got to go and do this, I've got to go and do this. My other half does it all the time. And I'm like, just don't do it. It's as simple as that. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Well, like her mother, or my mother-in-law, can be a really big pain, but she's the nicest, most lovely person in the world, and she would do anything for anyone. So you want to be reciprocal with that. And she just comes from like just a lovely place. And you're very similar, where you will always give your time and energy to other people. And I can imagine people would take that. I get the same. Can you do me a free program? Can you do me this? Or just watch these 17 videos I'm sending you and check my form. And I just don't do it anymore. You know, like like my friends, I will. If they, like one of them asked me recently, can I pick them up from the airport? Yeah, no worries, not a problem. I know if I asked them, they would do the same. And it doesn't have to be reciprocal, but what I'm saying is you're willing to spend that time on that person. And my circle has got a lot smaller since I sold the gym. And that's a deliberate thing. So how in the industry, how are you keeping your circle specific? Is it people that you want to work with? Is it people that you kind of see that yourself you like working with? Do you ever work with people that you don't like working with?
No.
Have you ever worked with a brand that you don't like?
No. So that's the thing. Like I'm similar in that way where I'm so focused on, because I'm focused on story, and I'm like, again, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. And like there's so many times where I've had clients like, they'll be like, oh, can you do a video for like free? Or can you do something for like 100 quid or like really like below my rate? And like something that my dad taught me where it was like, would you pay your, like if you were someone else and you saw like yourself and your skill you had, and you know, would you want to, like, would you accept that? I was like, no, like, if, like, me being from an outside perspective, like, I would never do that. I would never underpay. Like, if I knew you were, like, one of the best in the area to do it, like, I wouldn't lowball you. Like, yeah, I'll pay you your rate, right?
Also comes back to my point. I think people just pay for outcome. You know you're going to get the best quality from you, so they pay for that. And I believe sometimes people ask me, they'll say, oh, Dec, I want to do strongman training. Can I do it with you? You could do it with me, but it's going to be a waste of your time. Or not a waste of your time, but you're going to get a lot more value from doing it with Tom. People come to me all the time, can I do weightlifting? Go see Pish. You know, and I'm big, and I think people trust you more because of that as well. It's that know, like, and trust you. And going back to confidence, my mentor taught me, he said, everyone wants you to be confident, but then when you are, they call you arrogant. And I remember thinking, wow, that is crazy, isn't it? But it's a lot of stuff where people go, oh, you need to make sacrifices in your life. And then when you make them, they go, oh, that's selfish. It's really interesting that there's different perceptions and people have a different, they'll tell you to do one thing and then when you do it, they're not happy that you've done it. So it is really interesting. So you have to have a lot of self-belief in what you're doing. It was actually G who messaged me saying, oh, Tilak's broken up with his little girlfriend, and you've been with her for a long time as well. But you're always helping people. So it was really, I remember thinking, oh, that's really tough, man. But you're someone who reaches out to other people and just tries to build them up all the time. Like Tilak sent me a lovely message the other day, like a couple of weeks ago just saying, Deck, love the videos, you've come on so much since doing it. And that's like, he didn't have to send that, you're not obliged to do it. It was just a lovely message to receive, and that sort of thing makes your day. So if there was more people like Tilak in the world, it would be a better place, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I think the same goes for you. Like, I think because you're always pushing and you're always like, even from like one thing I was going to say before was, I remember when we first, like I came to meet you and like, I like pitched myself basically and what I wanted to do. I remember, like some people probably think this is rude, but I love this. Like I was talking to you about like what like you wanted and stuff, and I don't know who it was. I think it was Kirsten or someone was lifting with Pish downstairs, and you have a window, right?
I remember.
And like she was lifting and you were just watching, and I was like, yes, like I was like, I always want to make stuff for people that are actually in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I didn't know you that well then, but I was like, I don't know much about this guy, but the fact that, you know, he loves what he does so much that he's watched, like, he's in an interview type of scenario, but like, he's more focused on the lift and like
I'm a
boosting.
crazy person where
and
I focus on so many things at once.
But it was so inspiring because I'm like, oh, do you know what? I don't mind doing stuff for him because he's like passionate, right? And I think that's one thing you mentioned before. I was like, have you ever worked with anyone that's like, you don't like? And I was like, no, because I wouldn't even do that. Because firstly, if I'm investing so much time, and I put so much, a lot of people don't see this, but I put effort in before we even shoot.
A lot.
Right? So like, I want to know everything about your brand.
You were like researching powerlifting,
exactly. And like figuring out what the hell's powerlifting, what's the difference between, you know, like weightlifting and powerlifting and different like how does this world work, right? And I always like immerse myself because I feel like it'll make a better video and like put the story out. So I feel like with you I was like, oh, I could see that, right? I could see that potential where it's like, this guy and like what he represents and his story and like, and obviously other things, right? Where I was like, oh, like one thing I really like and like I wanted to focus on as well in this was your leadership, right? And I think that was really important because everyone in the gym would like look up to you, right? And it's one of those where you're very humble about it and you're like, I'm a small bit, I don't know nothing. But I think I think the reason why it was so successful and like a lot of people love the gym and it was such a crazy atmosphere because you would see people that would lift heavy, you'd see like empowered women, like there was like, you know, little kids training, like it was such a healthy and like fun environment. And I feel like the reason why it worked was like a good part. And I know you may or may not admit this, but it's because of you and because of like your vision of like, oh, this is what I want, right? And like you said, you're not trying to, I feel like the people that do really well in life do not care about the money, do not care about the sales. You just care about doing the best in your field, right? And
so you talked about leadership there.
Yeah.
How did you find managing people? What did you find useful, good, needed to do? I
feel like in terms of managing people, I think it's really easy. Like I know a lot of people struggle with it, but I feel like it's all like, it all comes down to like, do they feel heard? And like, I think you've got to understand people, right, to their core. Like I've always, I'm big on like body language, right? Like I'll always like read people like, they say one thing, but they don't mean it, right? Like they'll be like, yeah, I can do it. But I'm like, you're not fully there. So it's like, I think you've got to realize like what kind of people you're working with. And then I always try and there's always a barrier with everyone. It's like, some people are really open, some people like introverted, extroverted. You've got to find out how they work and then also play to their strengths, right? So if there's someone that's, you know, like really nervous, like what do I need to do to make them feel comfortable?
100%. I see this all the time, to be fair. And there's someone called James Allison and another person called Total Wolf. They work quite closely together. Yeah, and they talk about giving people the freedom to fail. And you touched on it quite a few times there. They actually said when they came into the F1 team, break everything, because that's the best way we're going to ever find what doesn't work. And then once we've got rid of all that, then we know what does work. And I always remember thinking that's a great way of managing. So like, I'm very big on people failing now. Like we'll try, I used to be like a perfectionist, but we'll try a course now for teaching, and we'll go, right, we'll try this way of doing it and this way of doing it. And sometimes it don't work, and that's fine. Absolutely fine if it doesn't work, you know. And sometimes there'll be a way of, let's say if Ofsted come in, I know I'm one of the leaders, so I have to take control of that situation and make sure I'm the figurehead. Like I would love to be the person that they interview. I'd love to be the person putting my hand up going, I want to take control of this, because I think there is different leadership qualities, and I'm always thinking, let's protect my staff. And I'm very fortunate that I work for some great bosses. especially Harry, he's very empathetic. Like I remember there's been a couple of situations where he's like, oh, this is going on in your life. Oh, just take a couple of days off. Like, don't even dare think about coming to work. Or just do what you need to do that gets us like ticking over or gets the results done that we need to get done. And then when you feel like you're ready to absolutely smash it again, Dad, just come back. Because I'm the sort of person that will just give 100 mile an hour all the time. And sometimes I do come down and crash and burn. So to have that boss there who will go, who realizes and goes, wow, you've done a lot the last few months there, just take this time off. Or take your foot off the gas is really good. And I've never had that before. So for me, it was quite like rewarding and beneficial. And I've taken that onto my leadership qualities now. So we had a couple of tutors that I was helping and basically like mentoring. And now I'm really big on that. So like when Sophie was delivering her first course recently, I'm like ringing her after the day. How did it get on? How did you do? Do you need any support? Like, have you got everything? Have you planned for tomorrow? Like when she was doing it and stuff. And I was like, do you need anything? Sometimes she's like, Dad, what's this? What's this? What's this? Like, I've done it for you. Don't worry about it. And, you know, and that's because it's her first course. So if I, you know, sometimes I know, right, I need to show it her. Sometimes I'll just do it for her this time and then she can progress because she's got so much on her plate to learn. If I do a few things for her, it's not the end of the world. Over time, you're giving her a long period of time to learn, she will be a better tutor for it. Whereas if I go, oh no, you're really rubbish, you're not very good at this, she's going to get no development out of that, or very little. A very few people respond to that harsh treatment. When I was younger, it was very much harsh treatment, like especially like sport. That was rubbish. Why did you let your man go? Why weren't you marking him? It was very harsh, and I actually responded quite well to that, but not all the time. I'd say 90% of the time I would, but ultimately I think it's a longer term psychological thing where it would probably be a bad thing to teach like that. So it is really different, and we talked a lot on this podcast about communication styles, and I think communication has been the biggest growth over the last 20 years. And I don't always communicate great. I'm poor with eye contact, I'm poor with attention, I'm poor with conversational thread. But what I do a lot of the time is I will be committed, and I'll also make sure that I stick to my word, as you said. And there's some times where I'm like, oh, I can't bother doing this. But I do it because I've told them I will do it. So it's a big thing that. And you've talked on it a lot today where you have to trust that person who you're working with. It's such a tough mentality to have. But I think the hardest thing in leadership for me, I don't know what you think, is making tough decisions. Do you know, and that Gary Vee talks about it all the time. You've got to hire quick, but you've got to fire even quicker. If that person isn't right for you or your company or your team or whatever you're doing, get rid of them. And it's good for them as well because they're probably going to have a rubbish time if they're not good for it. And that's something I've learned. And it's not just necessarily on the personnel, it's just tough decisions in general. Make a tough decision sooner when you see it is more important. And you can go with a gut decision sometimes. Tell me about some tough decisions you've had to make.
Okay, wait, so before I get into that, you just mentioned a really good point. So obviously, like, you were like, had this leader position for a while, right? So I'd love to know, like, how did you manage that? And like you just mentioned, right? So like you've learned these lessons. What are like the biggest lessons you've learned from like being a leader and like, you know, managing all these different personalities and like, you know, even from like my experience of being there, there's so many strong personalities. So like, you know, how did you like manage all?
So yeah, we've got so many great stories about that. But my logo at FitSess, and it's tattooed on me, and I still believe it to this day, is it was a mountain, because I believe there's lots of ups and downs and lots of peaks, and I still believe that now. There was times where I was a very good leader, there was times where I was a very poor leader, and I was a young leader. Like I got the gym when I was 22.
Yeah,
how old are
that's
you now?
insane. I'm like 24.
Yeah,
that's
so,
insane.
Like, I remember thinking back to that now, and I'm very proud of it. But at the time, I thought it was nothing. I was fearless, but I was also very brash and hard, and I communicated really poorly. And that's the biggest mistake I ever made. I communicated poorly, and I also thought everyone was me, who could do what I could do, which was work every hour under the sun and not have any sort of repercussions for it. So some of the better leadership decisions I made were I would often get other people to, one, lead, and two, I'd also get them to make their own decisions. So I remember sometimes like Pish was like, what do I do here? What do you want to do? And he'd come back and go, right, that's great. I remember there was a really tough moment where like Pish was the sort of character who would always ask for a pay rise. And I would literally just go, here's the books. Who do you want me to dock wages so you can have your pay rise? Or what do you want to change in the business that warrants your pay rise? How are you going to make the business more money to get a pay rise? And he loved that, I think, because he responded well to it. I always kept my word with him. I said, if you did X, Y, and Z, you would get a pay rise. And he'd go, yeah, no worries. And then obviously there was a really tough situation, and then, like, people watching this, if they know, will laugh. We had a very particular human called Thomas Hume, and he was the hardest person ever to manage.
Yeah.
And I used to live by the rule of everyone was treated the same and fairly. Yeah. He couldn't be treated like that. And you know that, didn't you? Like, there's some of the stuff he would do, I would often get staff members come to me and go, I would be disciplined for that, or I couldn't do that. And that's because you've got to manage people individually, and you've got to manage them in very specific ways. So Tom is the best coach I've ever worked with in my life, the most talented person I know in this industry, but one of the worst for marketing, sales, and just working with people in general. Being, part of a team. He never grew up with team sports. He never grew up with being part of a team. And I think what we taught him is to how to be part of a team. Because we would eat our meals together. We would play things like cricket together. We'd go out on days out together. They were really strong and important parts of it. But Tom was the sort of character who would often make mistakes and really make big mistakes. And sometimes it was really hard to manage that. Sometimes I managed it horrendously, but I would pick this kid up every single day for work. Or I would make sure he had a lift from one of my other members of staff if I weren't in. I would drop him off every day and make sure he'd eaten and make sure he had everything. And so much to the point of, like, I remember he broke his meniscus and he rang me at like 3 a.m. to tell me and talk me through it. And he wanted to, like, I was his confidant on that. And I remember that. And even recently he's got a new job down in Birmingham. He wanted my advice on it. And I love that legacy that it's led, that he has someone to speak to, because he's not got many people to speak to. Like, I can't imagine him speaking to other people like that, and it's really nice. And even the other day, like, he tagged me in a really funny story, and it just shows that he's matured and he's getting it. And I see a lot of that with other people, and that's probably the most important part of leadership for me, is that you're leaving a legacy that some people can follow. You always, and you touched on gratitude before, you're always in a situation in your life that you often think is okay, not fantastic, not amazing, but not poor. But often you look back at it and you reflect, and you talked about reflecting as well earlier. You look back and reflect and you're like, I missed that time. I do that all the time. So now I'm just I live in like a bubble where I feel like I live like a step away from where I am now, my physical body, and I look back and go, really enjoyed that. Even at night, I look back and go, what a great day I've had. I've had work, I've been to like the gym, I've played golf, I've seen my friends, seen my family, might have been a video call with my niece or something like that. What a great day. And I think that's what being a business owner taught me, being a leader taught me, and sometimes it's showcasing. If I could do it again, would I do a lot of things differently? 100%. I'd be more person-centered. I would do the whole hiring and firing quickly, much better. I'd make the tougher decisions. That was my weakest point. I didn't make the tough decisions quick enough.
Were you just scared to sort of fire people, or like, say no?
Fear of failure. So I was this sort of person who was quite wear my emotions on my sleeve. I used to shout at people. I hated that side of me. So I'd really try not to. But in 2018 and 19, I really struggled. I started having panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And I went to see a psychologist literally just down the road from where we are. And she was called Dr. Watson. She was really, really good. And she was like, very simple, Deck. You have a huge fear of failure. You don't want people to see you failing. You don't want to see yourself failing. You've gone through life fairly successfully. Things have been fairly easy. And this is hard. And you've struggled. And if you've let yourself down, you've compounded those errors quite consistently. And she really helped me to, one, understand my psychology, but two, the bigger picture, instead of looking at the smaller picture all the time. She was like, in the long term, though, this is going to be better, this is going to be better. And that is a big thing, though, to get anyone to do. And she's still, even to this day, like, I would still go and see her, and we wouldn't just discuss my psychology, we'd discuss business. And she was really good at that in terms of, right, what's the psychology? And now it's often called, what do they call it? Culture. They often call it culture in a workplace. But ultimately, that's the psychology of the workplace. And that we worked on that tremendously hard. And that comes from me doing everything I can to make sure that I am showing others that I would do any part of the job. Any part of the job. If equipment came, I'd build it. If something needed doing, I'd clean it. If the alarm went off at 2 a.m, I'd go and make sure I turned it off and made sure it was okay. I would do anything in that gym.
That's good.
And I think others need to see that as well for leadership
100%.
standpoint.
I think you mentioned a good point where, to be a good leader, you need to do that. Like, people look up to you, right? So if you're doing things, I'm like, oh, like, I'm more inspired. And then that's a really good point that you mentioned, because I obviously didn't get to see that angry deck. But one thing I was like remarkably like, oh, like he's so like relaxed, like all the time. Like you were so in control. Like even where situations that other people were annoying you, you just laugh at, but oh well. Like, oh, okay.
Not
much
much you can do sometimes.
Yeah, not much you can do. And I was like, oh, that self composure. I was like, has he always been like this? Or has he learned this? Because there was moments where I could tell like, this definitely isn't good news for you, right?
Or it's not going well.
It's not going well, but you just brushed it off your shoulder. And I think that's what, like, when I started realizing, like, actually, and I saw this quote somewhere, and I actually told someone this, where I was like, life isn't really what happens, it's more about how you deal with it, right? Like, something bad happens, like, obviously you're going to be devastated. I think it's okay to maybe feel it, because you can't, like, get rid of those emotions, but stop wasting the rest. Don't waste the rest of your day, just enjoy it. Like, life is, like, so short.
You might have a bad moment, but you can crack on and have a great day.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so true. It's like, I'm a big golf person now. Like, I took it up a couple of years ago and I love it. I love just being out in nature with my friends. And you might hit a poor shot and you're like, and in my psychology now, the way that Dr. Watson taught me, she went, if you ever look at any shot or anything in sport, it always comes from a really tough moment. So she's like, if you've played a bad shot, you've got to look forward to you can make a hero shot next. So she was like, think about it, what are your favourite sporting moments? And I was like, 99. I remember being 5 years old and United winning the treble. She went, they were 1-0 down and won 2-1 with 2 minutes to go. You know, scored 2 goals. And it's because they were 1-0 down. It's things like that. And she's so true. In hard times, I remember we had some tough times at the gym.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, we're all sat there. And I remember we'd ordered pizzas and stuff. And we're all sat there going, we made it through the day. And we had such a tough day, but we've done it, and we're all here, we're all friends, we're eating good food, we're having a good laugh.
Yeah.
Like, what's more important than that?
Yeah, no, that's such a sick thing, because like, even when I realized, like, like, you can have the worst day, right? But as long as you have, like, 1 or 2 people, like, if it's your missus, if it's, like, family, that you can come back to and be like, we made it, it was a shit day, or, like, maybe it was a good day, or, like, whatever kind of day it was, you come back and be like, let's do it again, let's try again. And, like, I think that's so comforting, having that.
100%. I think that's crazy. You can learn from every single person, every single situation. And I think that's what I've done well over the last 5 years, is I've learned and I've developed and adapted quickly. And I think that's so important. Like, I'm so good at doing what I do now, and it's only because I've had to adapt. And like you said, it's not being big-headed, it's confident. I know the results I get at work and in my career because I've put a lot of time and effort into it. And I'm very confident that I wake up and I look in the mirror and I'm very happy with where I am, what I've achieved. And I think that's important for anyone listening. If you are a leader, you know, ask yourself, are you happy with the person in the mirror? Are you happy? Because there was a lot of times I wasn't happy with that. I say to people all the time, with the habits, rather than try and build 5 or 6 at once and lose them all, the studies have suggested it takes 21 days to develop a habit. It's a very famous book. So I say, give yourself 28 days, give yourself a 7-day buffer. If you develop 1 habit a month, you've got 12 new habits a year. If I said to you at the start of 2024, you're going to have 12 new habits by the end of this year, we'd all take that. Yeah, I think I'd take 3. Yeah, personally. So I'd take 25% of that. So try and focus. And you said hyper-focus. Again, that can be seen often as a negative. But I do believe in you should hyper-focus on 1 habit or 1 goal at one time. And there's a really good way of looking at this in terms of it. Like, I go back to golf a lot because I'm learning a lot from the coaches and the sport in general. When you're going for a swing change, often your golf swing will be much worse because you're changing something. And it's going through that hardship of going playing with your mates, knowing you're probably better than them or you can play better, but you know that this change will benefit you long term. And we talked about Tom earlier, and that relates back to Tom. I knew long term this would be better for him as a person, not necessarily the business or me, but him as a person. He will develop from these lessons and the stuff that we're going to do. So sometimes you do have to take that approach. Sometimes you have to go, that's, I can't afford that long term journey. I have to take the short term. So there is lots of different ways of dealing with things, and there's lots of different situations, but ultimately you've just got to do what's right for you. And a lot of people don't like doing that. It's seen as a really taboo thing. It's seen as a selfish thing. But I was always taught, if you're not right, you can't help others.
That's true.
And I'm a big believer in helping others. Like, I love teaching, I love PTing, I love helping people. Like, one of my other students recently, who I work with on a monthly basis now, she's a powerlifter now. And I give so many free programs out to students. And she's like, why do you do it? And I went, I just love it.
Love it, yeah.
I just love it. And I said, I'd kick myself because I'm like, I could charge them. I should charge them. But I don't. And I don't care. I'm such a bad person. With
No,
that
but
sort of stuff.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
We, on our podcast, on the Fit Sound podcast, we had another training provider in, and he was a student of ours.
Oh, nice.
Gone on, opened up his own gym, Fortitude Fitness, opened
Yeah.
up his own training provider, so did what we did.
Yeah.
And I started him on the podcast. People were like, what? I
Sick.
was like, everyone
Yeah.
can be successful. I was this naive as well. Preston had the most independent gyms at the time when I had an independent gym. I think I told you this. We had the most independent gyms in our area. And I remember saying to my business manager at the time, I said, it won't work because there's too many gyms. And he said, no, look at it the other way. He said, if you went to a random state in America where there was no gyms, that means there's no market for it. He said, if you're coming to a place where there's loads of gyms, there's a market for it, which means people actually appreciate that service. And it dawned on me when we went to Paola, there's no gyms, there's no PTs, because there's not a market for it.
Yeah.
Where here there is. So that's the big difference. And everyone can be successful. You have levels of passion for certain things, and you will sacrifice a certain number of things for certain different aspects you want to achieve or things you want to do. And at the moment, you're really into the gym, so you're sacrificing quite a lot for that. When you were really big on building your business, you were willing to sacrifice your time. And Tilak's always very good with his time. Like when I first set up the podcast, you came and actually helped.
Yeah, like
you
it was
actually
the same
showed
sort
the
of
apprentice
Yeah.
how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's like really give him with his time. He's always like that. He still brought all his equipment that day. And
Yeah,
said he
I
could
remember
use
that,
it.
yeah.
I went to a new gym recently on Friday with some friends, and I love watching the other coaches.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it's my mentor's gym.
Yeah.
So I was speaking to him about some of the old school stuff, but even now he's still learning and I still learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets us aside from some other coaches.
Yeah.
We're still always looking to
Yeah,
learn.
I think that's so important. Like
People
you've
are
got
always surprised that I say like how good Tom and Pish are.
Yeah.
And like other coaches. And they're like, why wouldn't you big yourself up? I'm like, I do, but I don't need to.
Don't
And
need
in
to,
certain
yeah.
sections they are so much better than me.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point because like you can't do everything and you can't be amazing at it, but the fact that you recognize other people that are better, I think you play a more important role of like bringing that together. Like, oh, like I know for a fact I'm not going to be the best at lighting or camera or whatever, but what I'm going to play to my strengths and then hire people that can fill that gap.
That comes from my overall goal in life. I want to bring all the PT industry together. Everything, absolutely everything. The training providers, the careers opportunity, the PTs themselves, the coaches, the clients. Bring it all together and just make it more professional, a better quality service and a better quality of staff delivering that service, whether it be PTs or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the idea. That's
So I've got a really good question. So if we go back to like younger Deck, what's your story? What made you get into
personal training,
but also what made you get into like PTing, and then more specifically, I don't know if you've always been very powerlifting, weightlift, like strength, or did you start off as just a general PT, then specialize? Like how did that all work out for you?
Very randomly, I was very young. My dad was really into the gym, really into he was really into boxing. So I was into that. That was like, I was rubbish at that. I wasn't an aggressive person then, which is funny because when I play sport now, I'm super aggressive. So I wasn't aggressive as a youngster. I was really like timid. And then he took me to a powerlifter and he showed me how to bench and stuff like that. So I was like really young, like I'm talking 9 or 10. And then I was playing cricket, and at cricket there was like, we did some like strength and conditioning stuff and I was really good at it. So I just naturally, and it came from wanting to be better because my dream was always to be a professional sportsman, didn't care what it was in.
Yeah.
So I remember being a really young kid and I would get up really early and go running.
Oh, nice.
And then I remember reading about nutrition, so I'd be really big on nutrition. And then I really struggled between like the ages of 11 and 16 on my weight. So I was really focused on like reading about nutrition and exercise. And it was mainly because like a lot of my friends were like in really good shape and I wasn't. So I really tried to focus on that. And then I naturally did a lot of PTing and coaching from like the ages of like 16. So I did quite a lot. And then there was a qualification then, but it wasn't very good. So I did that qualification by accident.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting a proper qualification like 4 or 5 years later. So I was about 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 21. And yeah, I really loved it. So I got a proper qualification. And then I went and worked in commercial gyms again. I'd already worked in them before. Started working in commercial gyms again. And I hated the product. Yeah. I hated how like people were coming in and no one knew how to do anything. Yeah. So I thought I can do this better. Yeah. So I opened up FitSess and that's how it came about. But I'd also had experiences in running other gyms and being part of other gyms, and I was very ballsy, for a better word. Yeah. It was very like risk averse. I think, is that the right word? Yeah. I didn't really think about risk at all. Yeah. I just went, no worries, I'll do it. Yeah. Like I remember signing like a lease, and people were like, that lease is worth like thousands and thousands of pounds. You do know if the gym doesn't work, you still have to pay that.
Yeah.
So do I? Yeah. Sound,
That's crazy, yeah.
It'll work. And I remember like going all over the country, like getting the kit, and people were like, what, you finish work at 8 o'clock at night and then you drive into Brighton to pick a kit up and drive to Bournemouth and Scotland and all over in this Sprinter van, which I remember thinking, I'm 22, I'm not allowed to drive this long wheelbase van. And there was a really funny moment at a service station once where I was turning left into the car section and I forgot I was in a massive van. So I couldn't really park there. So I'm trying to get out of it. And obviously it's built for cars. And my back wheel touched the curb. And it's like quite a large curve, like this high. And the van started tilting. And all the equipment like moved to one side. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So I run to the other side, lean over to the other side.
Yeah.
And thankfully it didn't fall over. But oh my God, I was so scared. And I remember like even the police spoke to me once because they were like, how much equipment have you got in there? And I didn't realize there was like a limit on it.
Oh, really?
Like 4.5 ton you can have or something. And I had a lot of gym equipment in.
Yeah.
And they could tell because the wheels were like down and all the suspension was sitting on it. And I remember thinking, oh my God. They didn't go, how old are you? Or what are you doing?
Yeah.
I showed them and they were like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Just like try and distribute it better. And I was like, whew. I remember thinking. That's my story. And I was a really, really poor leader when I started and then I just developed. And then probably the most poignant part for me was meeting Daniela. Like she was just a completely different type of person than me. And she just taught me so much more about how to enjoy life and stuff. But I came from like a really poor background. Yeah. And that gave me a lot of self-drive. And then over the last 5 years, I've been trying to work out, was I born with that self-drive or has it always been there? So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because
if you want to become successful, you just have to want it enough. And it sounds really simple, but the sacrifices that are required are so great. You've got to ask yourself, are you prepared to do it? Yeah. I asked myself this over the last couple of years since I sold the gym, do I want to do anything similar? Yeah. And the answer for me at the moment is no. I'm putting all my sacrifice, time, effort into spending time with family, friends, my niece, but also golf. Yeah. And I know I get the reward from that. If in the future I did want to open up a new business, I know what sacrifice it takes now because I've learned that lesson, I've got that experience. So it's a really interesting concept. Yeah. But I do believe if you are from a poorer background, you have a lot more intrinsic motivators. Yeah. We've talked about the gym a lot in this, and I'm a big believer that motivation isn't really a real thing. Yeah. It's all about discipline. Yeah. All about discipline. You've got to be disciplined. It's the biggest frustration for a PT. Yeah. Because clients often not going to be disciplined. Yeah. But you learn techniques with experience on how to make the client, one, more disciplined, or two, factor in off days, clients lying to you, clients not being motivated. So based off that, what are your top tips? Because it's something I'm trying to do as well. What are your top tips for being disciplined? Like someone who probably has none, has some, like how do you develop that? How do you get discipline? How do you develop discipline? Plan it out over a long period of time because you need to develop habits. You need to be consistent with those habits and they'll form into discipline. That's my biggest, most important thing for me. When I was at what I would say my healthiest, my physical peak, and even with intellect as well, like developing academically, it was because my habits were at the best. What I found over time is because I let them happen and because I didn't prioritize them, I lost a lot of those habits. And then I created an unhealthy routine. I'm on that journey now where I'm trying to create a healthy routine. Some things don't work. We talked earlier about failure and breaking things. Sometimes I'll do it like that actually hasn't worked. But yeah, for me, the most important thing is develop habits, then develop your consistency, and then you'll be dedicated. And it needs to be over a long period of time. And for that dedication, you need to understand your why. Why you're doing something. What does that mean to you? Because there'll be a lot of dark days where it's not working or doesn't seem to be on the right. So did this journey come from an external factor? Or is it more intrinsic? Did the journey start with the disappointment of the breakup? I think, it was like a coping mechanism, but I think that was the running side, not the lifting side. Yeah. But once I started, I actually enjoy it, right? So it's hella fun to do. But it's also like when it's like really crap outside, I was like, I really want to go, but I'm like, I'm tired. I don't really want to go outside. It's cold and exposing myself to pain, right? And like, I'm not just doing like simple exercise. I'm doing a lot of like stuff that takes a lot of energy out of you. So it's like, why am I doing this? Like to become better, right? Yeah. But I'm like, they're like
don't like treat yourself better than this. Like, don't like, you know.
Pain's the word I probably wouldn't use. I like to use discomfort. So I like to put people in, like I advocate people go into an uncomfortable situation often.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to understand why. So I'll give you some good examples of what I do. Like some people say to me, "Oh, Dad, do you want to have an ice bath?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I know the benefits are large, but it's not for me. Yeah, I just don't want it enough. Them benefits, I don't want them enough." People say to me, "Oh, don't drink." I read a studies about not drinking caffeine for the first hour in the day.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Love my coffee too much. I ain't giving that shit up.
Yeah,
but other things I will sacrifice. So I will go to bed early. I will wake up early. I never drink alcohol. It's been years and years and years since I drank alcohol. I won't do that because I am willing to make that sacrifice. So often people are not willing to make certain sacrifices. And we've said sacrifice a lot because that's the ultimate thing. When you come into discipline, you've got to sacrifice certain things that the general norm often see as the norm. But for you, there might not be because it requires discipline. So it is a really interesting one. And I asked you before about intrinsic or extrinsic motivators. I think it's fine to have a balance of both. I used to have an insane amount of internal drive. I still do for things I really want. But also I think it's fine to have external drives now. So every now and then if motivation, discipline is ebbing and not flowing, then you might treat yourself to something. So for instance, you might buy yourself a new workout top or a new pair of trainers because that sort of stuff will remotivate you and refocus you. I often think if you plan those along the journey, they're really important. Often reflecting back on the journey you've been on is important as well. I talked off podcast and when I picked you up this morning, like I found a hard drive of all our videos. It was so emotive. It was so special. And I really love that. And it motivates me to want to be a better coach.
Yeah.
But I think you do things or you put yourself in uncomfortable situations when you really want something.
Yeah.
I really wanted to do these podcasts and YouTube videos and I was really awful at them when I first started.
Yeah.
And you just do it.
Yeah.
People often
But as
say,
you do it, you get better.
100%. People say to me all the time, how do you be successful as a PT? We need to do a lot of uncomfortable things. Oh, you have to go on social media. Oh, I don't want to do that. Okay. We have to go and speak to people in the gym. Don't want to do that. Well, unfortunately, you're not going to be successful. And
that is so interesting.
if you have goals and something you're working towards is great. If you're coming in and your goal is, I'm just going to train for 4 weeks, whatever happens, happens. I don't feel like you're invested in that goal. You've put enough time and effort into it. So really think about your goals. Also, air your goals to people. Like we've talked many a time that I would like to start a YouTube channel. And I've been very open and vocal about it more in the last 6 months because I feel like that'll help me hold myself accountable. And accountability is so important. So you're not going to go to the gym tonight and lift less than you did 2 weeks ago because you've got it on your app and you're going to go, I did this, so I know I can do it. It's self-belief. 2, I want to challenge myself. And 3, I know the feeling I'll have once I do it. If you went in today and lifted less than you did a couple of weeks ago, you'd be disappointed.
So sorry to interrupt you there, but that has happened but one thing I have learned from that is I have to understand why. So like there's times where I'll squat like a lot and then for some reason, like I'll go the next day and might be, even if it's a simple thing like timing, even if it might be I've not ate right or something's gone wrong in the day or whatever it is. And I was like, what the hell? Like I could squat 2 20 kg plates and I can only do 10 today. Like, and it's a struggle. I feel it more. Whereas some days I go lock in and I'm like,
you're looking at recovery.
I'm recovering. Like, did I do this right? What am I? Where are the bits? Because it happens, right? You're not always gonna have like progressive and like you're not always gonna lift the same
linear loading.
Yeah. And I think one thing you mentioned was like that deload week, right? And having like phases where you need to like relax a bit.
That's so important. Like my friend said to me recently, because I've turned 30 this year, like a couple of weeks ago, and he said, like, what's the biggest difference? And I was like, you just don't give a fuck what people think. Like, you just don't care. Like, you'll do things that you wouldn't have done a few years ago because you just don't have that same fear factor of oh my God, this is embarrassing. Like, there's so many things that we did. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you've done that. And I'm like, I took that chance. It worked out or it didn't work out. All right, I did something that I won't regret. Or I do something that's a little bit silly, but a little bit fun as well. Because you just don't care anymore. You might ask the question and it might lead on to an opportunity that you might not have asked a year ago because you were too shy. And that's getting out of your comfort zone, isn't it? It's really interesting. I love that sort of stuff. I love thinking about the psychology, but I definitely don't care as much now. And I think that comes from a self-confidence and a looking in the mirror and just being proud of who you are. And that's really important for me. Like that's something I really struggled with for periods of my life. So I know for me, I have to go, right, I'm happy with this. There's lots of things I can improve. And I've got like internal goals that I really want to improve on, whether that be mindset, managing my emotions better, being a better person. But every year, every day, I just want to be a better boyfriend, a brother, a better uncle, a better friend, a better person. And I think, you know, if you have those intentions, you talked about speaking to God earlier. I've had a tricky relationship with God in my life, but if you've got good intentions, I feel like you're on the right track anyway.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think like what you said, like have goals, but also be better in not just like career, but like family life. Be like, what kind of life do I want? Like, is your money right? Is your relationships right? Like, what's important to you in like your sacrifice?
My psychologist got me to do something. She said, right, these are the things that you've talked consistently about: career, the gym, golf, your relationship with your partner, and your relationship with your friends and family. Put them in a list of top 5 in order.
In order.
And it was so hard. I was there for hours. I had to leave and come back a month later with the idea, because you're like, you think it's easy, but it's not.
It's not, yeah.
And it's a very fluid table. And she said, like anything you do, Dec, you have priorities at certain points and you have to change them around. You might spend more time on your relationship for a month or two. You might spend more time on golf for a month or two. And, you know, it's managing your time, because that's the most valuable thing we have, and it is really, really difficult. But guys, in the comments, let us know, what are your goals? What do you think is important to discipline? What keeps you on track? Who keeps you accountable? Who keeps you accountable?
Ooh, I think I used to rely, not necessarily. I think I used to rely on other people, but I think I've learned that people come and go, and like there's no consistent, right? So I'm like, I just have to do it myself. Like and I think I'm someone who can go to the cinema by themselves, or like I'll go and like go out to eat by myself, or I'll do things by myself. So because I'm like confident, just like I don't give a shit. Like it's so fun for me like doing that, right? So I'm like, I'll keep myself accountable. So like I love to-do lists, right? So I'm like, I just love like tracking progress. But all right, cool, let's try again. Or like having that self-talk, like that inner dialogue.
Self-talk and that self-drive is important. You talked about then, you went, people will come and go, and there's no consistency. Are they scars from previous things that have happened in your life?
Yes, potentially, but also because there's two approaches.
Important lessons.
Yeah, so there's important lessons. I think there's that pessimistic and optimistic approach. So what I found is, I've always used to believe in like, I trust this person, right? But I think true knowledge is knowing you know nothing, right? Like you will never know, like whoever obviously family's family, but friends and all those, they can be the most closest people to you, right?
100%.
But they can also change, right? And that's not their fault for changing, right? Everyone goes through change. So what I'm saying is, yes, like you should want that, right? But at the same time, what if they do leave, right? You don't want to be in a compromised state. So like I think
that's like a protection yourself.
It is a protection, because it's like, I want to motivate myself, right? And if I put all my energy into I want my partner, I want my friend, my best friend to go to the gym with me, and that is your motivation, or that is the person who keeps you accountable, for whatever reason, if they go away or they're not there, you lose that. So you lose that accountability. Does that mean that then you perform less? Or does that and because I'm like so focused on, I'm trying to be a better person, I do want to direct big, I have big goals, like you said, I have a lot of internal goals, like becoming better, but also I want to achieve a lot. I can't risk that. I don't want to risk my...
So you're very much protecting yourself here. Yeah. So when, you're going to have relationships in the future, are you going to be able to open up?
So that's the thing. I'm learning the balance of, and this is how I approach everything, right? Friendships and relationships, where it's like, I'll open up. I'm not scared of that. Person, I'm very open. I'm not scared to do that. But in the back of my mind, just like what you did, I've started doing this where I'm like, at the end of every day, I'm like, today was a great day. It might not come again. Though these could be the last conversations. So I won't ever be closed off or not think things are going to work out. I'll be like, I don't know how long this is going to last. That is being 100% real. I don't know how long this person will, obviously I want that, but I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm going to cherish it, live in the moment, but also make sure I focus on myself.
So you said there was optimistic and pessimistic. Yeah. Realistically, there's realism.
Yeah, realism. Yeah, exactly.
And then right in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's the place where I am where I'm like, oh mate, I love, like I said, I look back at memories, I look back at people, I love unconditionally, but at the same time, I'm real. I'm like, I'm not gonna blame you for changing, right? If that's your path and that's what makes you happy, great. But at the same time, I'm not gonna risk or, be dependent on you.
Would you say your videoing skills, you would attach to your self-worth? So the fact that you're really good at it, if you wasn't as good, would that dent your self-worth?
Maybe, yeah, because I think that's like it's a big part of me.
Because I used to attribute like my gym performance
yeah,
as my gym in the gym, like my actual physical performance as my identity.
Yeah.
Then how successful the gym was as my identity.
Okay.
Now, and I'm comfortable now knowing what I attribute my identity to, but also make sure that I manage what I attribute my identity to. So I attribute my identity at the moment to I just love working hard at my career and golf, and that's who I am. And that's fine. I'm not the greatest at golf. I'm probably not the greatest at my career, but I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with that. And that's really important. Like for me, and it comes back to I'm just grateful. Like people say to you, like you have these stupid sayings now, don't they? Like what era are you in? And I'm like, I'm in the grateful gratitude era for me personally. What era would you say you're in?
That's so funny because like I know some people like, oh, you in your villain era,
or
it's like because they've been through trauma. Doesn't necessarily have to be about heartbreak, but it's like they've like had a career where it's not worked out and they're in their villain era, they're having revenge. It's like, no, I don't see like that. Yeah, it's like they're villain.
That's a negative connotation.
Yeah, because everyone thinks so. I think the whole reason behind the villain era is you look like a villain, but actually you're the hero to yourself. But you're a villain because everyone else is like, oh, why they're not like letting me in, or why they're
you're a vigilante.
selfish. Yeah, exactly. So like everyone uses that, and I'm like, I wouldn't say that. I'd say I'm grateful to be here. Like whenever you are sad or you go through that, it's like I'm so great. I have legs, I have arms, I can breathe.
Exactly.
Like be grateful. I have goals. Like I'm just working towards them.
You have food.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just
clothes on your back.
Exactly.
So
enjoy the little things, and like it's just like I'm in my season. Like, and I think it's not going to change. It's like people are going to come and add to that, like relationships, family. I will have good moments.
You're going to be able to open up.
But yeah, 100%.
Think?
I think so.
You're going to be vulnerable though.
I think I'll be vulnerable.
You talked before about not being vulnerable at anything, and I found that really difficult with Daniela.
Yeah. I think because I also talk a lot about feelings, and I'm like very like emotionally intelligent. Like I've helped other people through a lot of stuff, so I feel like I understand it. I know what to do. And thing is, I don't know how you are with this, but I'm a big dreamer. Like I love thinking about the future. Like, I want to do this. Like I want to shoot for this. I want to make this. Like,
the day we got our house, we all sat on the, and this is like such a precious moment to me. Me, Fraser, and Daniela sat on the floor eating pizza. It's just great stuff like that. Like I'll remember that for the rest of my life. I remember the first day I met my niece. It was at my grandma's, and me and Fraser had bought her this huge teddy from Hamleys in London. We'd just been shopping in London, and we bought the biggest unicorn teddy. We went to Hamleys first. Yeah. So for the next 9 hours, we're carrying around this unicorn that's bigger than this table.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I've got this picture of Aura led on this thing, and she's only a few weeks old, and this unicorn is huge, and she's still got that to this day. I hope she keeps it forever. And like, I just remember walking around London with Fraser, like laughing our heads off, and then we had to fit all the shopping we'd done in the car and bring it back. It was just such a great day. But I think like I didn't go and win any award. I didn't do anything amazing. It was just a great time and a great day. And I look back and you never wake up thinking that's going to be the great day, but it is. And it's like some Christmases over the last few years have been amazing. Just random days. Like we've recently been, and I've talked about golf a lot on this podcast, but we recently went to Spain to play. And honestly, it was just so magical. Just 4 lads every day playing golf, out in the open, and just all doing their own thing. It was great. Such a great day. Just really great 4 or 5 days. It was just, honestly, it was so good. We had so many good moments over the last couple of years. And I think at the moment, some companies are going through tough times, and people are asking me about this. And I say, well, you've just had 2 or 3, 4 or 5 good years with them. You can have a bad year. You can have a bad few months. You can have a bad few weeks. But just remember you have 4 or 5 good years. So you can't have it all your own way. And I think that's the way I look at it. So if I had a bad month now, I go, no worries, I had a great couple of years. Can't complain too much.
And that's the thing, I think that keeps you positive and more, because I feel like the more bad stuff you get, okay, great, like it's a bit of a setback, but if you're focusing on that, you're like holding yourself back, and like, why would you want to feel crap, right? Like you'd rather use that energy and be like, oh, it's all right, it's fine, we'll get cracking. Like, I think, that never giving up attitude is always inspiring, so.
Nah, mate,
that's really sick.
I think it's been a sick
Sweet
podcast.
Yeah, no, it's been wicked, man. It's definitely, definitely learned a lot of new things.
A lot about you, mate.
But, yeah, no, 100%. But it's good because I think as I'm doing more of these and I'm putting more people on that I like look up to, it's like, it's good to know I'm on the right track, right? I might not know exactly where I'm headed, but it's like, okay, I can see these things from people that have done it, obviously more ahead in their career. So yeah, it's
As long
just
as you're
sick.
enjoying it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's like, since I've been through so much and like learning, right, and be like, oh, how do I actually do this? How do I manage? Like you said, like being vulnerable is hard. And like, do you think you will be able to? And I say this now, right, and it's interesting because there are times where I'm like, I don't like this person. I'm never gonna speak to them again. Blah blah. But then when that situation, completely different. Everything changes. So like, I think the only thing I do know is I don't know anything anymore. Like I just like I thought this was real and it's not. So like I'm like the best way that I'm trying to go through life is learn, always be like passionate and just give out love. Like always respect people. I hope it comes back one day, but if it doesn't, like don't stress. Like just enjoy. Like just have
You've done
fun,
it for
man.
yourself, which is the
Yeah,
most
exactly.
important thing. Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, guys, in the comments, let us know let us know what you thought. If you've got any questions for T, if you've got any questions for me,
for Deck.
drop them in the comments below. We may do another podcast. We will do another
Yeah,
podcast.
100%.
So we will
100%.
answer those.
Yeah.
There's so many more things. I feel like I talked
Yeah, a lot,
for about
ages,
an hour or two.
yeah.
Like I wanted to ask him about like would he really open up and stuff like that, and like
Yeah.
how vulnerable he could be with someone. But it's not the time. We've done enough on the podcast now. So mate,
I
thank you
appreciate
very
that so much.
That was
Thank you so much.
good.
No, it was sick. It was sick.
It was a good one.
But yeah, sweet. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
I'm ready for some
Wicked.
food.
Yeah.